one of the smart consultants we work with, has become very good at not even just helping people take these products to market, but helping them save millions in the time it takes to actually get the approval. So let's say that we've got a product being created, right? It's ready to go. There can be a 9-month to 18-month window of like before we're allowed to launch. Now, in that period of time, we've got all the employees there, we've got all the production ready to go, it's all set up, and so they can't sort of downside that, they're just waiting on the approvals. And so there's millions of dollars in that. Now, this person comes in, $80,000 is the spend, and is able to shrink an 18-month window to 6 weeks.
That's unbelievable.
Welcome to the Manage Self, Lead Others Leadership podcast with Nina Sunday for experienced and aspiring people managers. This show will help you explore ways to become a more intentional leader. Each episode, host Nina Sunday speaks with some of the brightest business minds on the planet who share a passion to elevate and transform team culture. Workplace culture hides in plain sight. Is yours flourishing? Join the movement to make your workplace a better place to work. Are you ready? Because it's time to manage self, lead others.
They call our next guest the consultant to consultants, recent inductee into the Australian Speaker Hall of Fame, host of the Your Consulting Business podcast, and founder of the Forge Business Program. I'm looking forward to speaking with Russell Pearson. Working with organisations of all sizes, creating change and transformation for over 30 years, Russell Pearson brings ideas and insights to every engagement. Welcome, Russell Pearson.
Thank you, Nina, for having me. It's fantastic to be here.
Yes, and I really appreciate you have a podcast. You had a conversation with me about my career story, and I really love your style and your approach. So I know you're one of the best consultant in Australia. So if anybody around the world wants to work with a consultant that has the superpower of being in the Australian, the aesthetic, then Russell Pearson is your man. But let's demonstrate that. Too. Say that again.
It's an interesting one too, because the words got out and it has become quite a global operation now. You work with people across the African continent. We talk about a lot of US clients, a lot of Canadian clients, UK, but I don't like the time zone. So there's plenty of people across the globe.
Yeah, whenever you talk strategy, and I've done numerous workshops with Russell over the years, whenever you talk strategy, you always have another angle, a fresh angle, and you're always outside of the box. So I'm just saying that up front because I totally value your approach and your smarts, really.
Oh, now, thank you.
We're going to talk about why hire a consultant. So just get the ball rolling. Why should organizations who maybe haven't done consultancy, had consultants come in before, what would be the sort of problem or issue that they're grappling with that they seek advice from outside their inner circle?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, there tends to be two different types of consultants. There's the generalist and then there's the specialist. And so, number one, the specialist is easy to talk to because it's very much around there's a specific problem that needs to be solved. We don't have the expertise in-house, and so we need to, retrieve those expertise from somewhere else. And so it's better to identify someone who has been doing that work and has deep expertise and experience in it to help them solve the problem. So that's one side of it. The other is the generalist, and a lot of people think, well, what benefit does a generalist consultant bring to the table? And it's process. So the generalist consultant is a process consultant, and so they've become very good at helping people solve problems. And so they may not even be the person who comes in and specifically does the change management or the transformation with the organization, but they prepare the organization. They actually take and potentially facilitate those people through whatever that change is to get from where the problem is to the outcome that people want instead. Now, that's just like a sense of the different types of consultants in there in broad strokes. But the reason you get someone in is because you don't know how to solve the problem yourself.
Or do some people think they they should be able to, and they just persevere until actually the horse is bolted, and they kind of get consultants in to fix the problem that could have been fixed if they got that person in earlier.
If you've done your due diligence and you've got a consultant who actually does have deep expertise and experience, they've been working in the space far longer than it takes to get a doctorate. We're talking about decades. And so they have the deep understanding of where you're at. And even if they're not from your sector, they understand the process of helping you get to a result.
Well, of course, they've got the outside perspective amongst multiple industries, usually. Mm-hmm. I mean, myself as a bit of a generalist trainer, after decades of actually working with different teams, I've got lots of perspective based on, that team had that problem, but it really matched and mirrored another team, but from another industry. So they've got that huge perspective. Whereas wouldn't it be true that managers and individual contributors from an organization, some of them might have been in the one place for decades, and they're starting to wear blinkers?
Oh, no, 100%. And I'll talk to another problem on that in a moment when you actually engage a consultant for too long, because there's a challenge there if you actually take one for far too long.
Well, the loyalty curse.
Yeah, well, there you go. And there's like the value really drops off. But the outside perspective is a massive key piece, and we'll talk to that in just a moment. But I call them lenses. Like every client that person's worked with, that expert has worked with, has created a new lens for them to look at the problem. And it allows, think of an optometrist with a different lens that they put in front of you. It creates a sharpening to the issue. And so you're in there in your business, whether it's a big enterprise corporate organization or even a medium-sized enterprise, and you're in the problem, right? And so you're not even seeing it without bias, because the bias is the proximity to the issue.
True.
And all the history that's come before and the politics within the organization, all those sort of things. So the consultant gets to see it through a clear lens of without the bias, number one. But number two, as you said before, they've seen it from many different perspectives and lenses, as I would suggest, from other examples of the same problem, but from slightly different angles with slightly different people involved. And so they can see the nuance, the nuance of how a problem can be solved.
Exactly. And it's nuances indeed. And one of my little sayings, and I've observed it with people often, is always look for the second right answer, because often people find one answer and go with it. And it's like, well, did you do a brainstorm and work out how 19 other possibilities? And often it's that idea number 19 that's far better than idea number 1.
And so the hiring of a consultant and how you go about that, I don't want to rush forward, but like there's a key piece here with identifying who would be a good consultant versus a bad consultant, right? And we're not just going to say this is good, this is bad. There's a lot of shades of grey in there, but I think someone who comes in to tell you what the problem is without actually having a diagnostic approach or haven't actually done a consultation, you know that person is not the right person, because they're giving you a blanket solution without actually identifying who are the people that are going to implement it.
If they rush to a solution too soon, I don't think they've done much critical analysis, really.
That's right. But it also then plays into the way they've been engaged, which is that you put out a pitch request or a proposal request, and sometimes those proposal requests is like, tell me specifically how you're going to handle this challenge. And any consultant who is answering that with this is how specifically we're going to do it is doing the client as much of a disservice as themselves.
Yes, I've seen that myself. I've said I could do a presentation on leadership and business, but can I have a consultation or a phone call at least to find out what your issues are? They went and engaged someone else who actually went through and said, well, I'll do this and I'll do this and I'll do this. And it's like, well, hang on, I could have done something quite tailored for you if you'd only spent 10 minutes.
30 years ago, I started my world in the design space. And in the design space, we always talk about the briefing step is the one that actually defines the end outcome. If you give a good brief, you get a good outcome. And so that tends to happen a lot in the consulting space, where people I often hear will say, we don't know what a consultant did. We engaged a consultant and it didn't have the effect they wanted. And then I find out later that they were very prescriptive on the way that they engaged their consultant.
They tell the consultant what they want without allowing the consultant to have that, well, before they're told what they want, just to come up with that fresh idea that takes them down a different path altogether.
And so it makes people start to believe that a consultant is the person who comes in to tell you what to do, instead of actually a consultant coming in to consult. And so the consulting itself is a process.
Can I share with you my problem with consultancy is that I cannot visualize it. I imagine someone gets hired based on a proposal and they come in and they sit in some hot desk in the office and they go and talk to people and then they go away and write a report. Is that kind of how it works? What do they do?
So the old model of consulting would be that, and there's a big document that's made and it's handed to somebody and they feel like the weight of the document equaled the weight of the value in the investment, and they put it in a drawer and it never gets looked at again. And so that's certainly not the way we train consultants. And I talk about me being the consultant to consultants. Well, we help consultants build a consulting business. They're very smart. They have all these expertise, but it's how you actually work with a client that makes the outcomes more valuable. So your ability to work with the client now, rather than just giving recommendations, is a key part of getting to outcomes.
To assist them to implement the recommendations.
Yeah, and even if it's guidance and facilitation, oversight, the key difference is that we'll call it in the old days, or maybe it's even the myth days. Like maybe it didn't happen as much as people say it happened. But people would come in and give a recommendation and walk away. And I've been asked for that in the past, and I just say I won't do it anymore, because without actually collaborating on the design with the people that are the actual physical people that are going to implement it, you're missing pieces of your design. You're missing pieces of, like, what are their strengths? What are their weaknesses? And I'm not just talking about SWOT. I'm talking about, what are the preferences of this person? What are they going to shy away from? What are they going to avoid? How are we going to actually make this design for the strategy, for the problem solving that we're going to put in place? How do we make it the most effective given the resources of people, as well as all the other resources that we're working with, but especially the people, using those people to get it done?
And of course, people need to understand the reason the change is being rolled out. And sometimes the manager that engaged the consultant isn't the best person to explain that. And sometimes the consultant needs to explain their thinking.
Yeah.
To convince people it's worthwhile doing.
And that's why there's stakeholder management. That's why a consultant needs to be a good communicator, especially these days. Ideally be in a place where they are able to mentor the organization. Now, I'll give you an example of a mistake that you'll get some impatient consultants making. And that's where they come in to fix the problem instead of getting the organization to be involved in fixing the problem. So there are consultants who'll come in and do the work for the organization, and they fix the immediate problem, but it doesn't fix the problem long term. They take them out of the organization because now it's fixed and it just falls back to where it was. All right, so that happens.
Yeah.
The other is that they actually put the person in there to plug the hole with their finger. And then they say, all right, the problem's fixed. And it's like, all right, well, I'm going to leave now. Oh, hang on, I can't leave because my finger's in the hole. If I take my finger out of the hole, we're going to be flooded again. And they become a cog in the machine. And then they've really disabled the company instead of enabling the company, because they've added too much of themselves into the process.
And this is where you train people to be good consultants that don't fall into these pitfalls, into these traps.
Absolutely. And so the challenge for a consultant these days is not just to be smart, but to be a master of helping organizations or individuals take the steps and enable them to do the pieces that need to be done. Now, that doesn't mean you're going to be completely hands-off. It means that you're going to potentially train at different points. You're going to guide at different points. Potentially, you'll even use more mixed modality than normal. So a bit more coaching than maybe we used to use, a bit more mentoring than we used to use. And I think that's really the future for good consultants, is to not be so stuck in your lane. And I find a lot of management consultants in particular are very stuck in their formats and their processes, but to actually look outside of those and say, what are other facilitation methods? What are other modalities of change that you can bring into your work?
And we are in a world of rapid change, and systems and processes that worked 10 years ago, maybe 5 years ago, that they need to be modified these days, and especially to include the AI element, which is we need to be, all of us need to be actually tinkering with AI, so we're not silly with it or naive with it. Yeah. Anyway, that's another story.
Yeah, and I think all consultants should be using some element of AI, even if it's just a brainstorming buddy. Yeah. But there's, on the flip side, you can see some consultants come in and appear much smarter than they are simply by asking the AI to give me the top 10 trends in the sector I'm about to walk into, and I'll I'll share that with the room and I'll talk to that.
Oh.
But in actual fact, the real key of understanding if this consultant is going to be the one who's going to be able to work effectively with you is, do you feel understood? And
I'm going to give you an example. I was lucky enough that when I was teaching speed reading for, was it the New South Wales Department of State Development, which they actually funded small business to do a business plan. And in the break, one of the consultants asked me a few questions. What's my turnover and how many staff? He said, oh, you qualify. You qualify for a business plan grant. So he said, I want to encourage you to make the application. So I did that. I got it. And I could pick from 3 consultants, and they each came in for a one-on-one conversation in my office. And it was really funny that the second one, when he spoke to me, as he was speaking, I would actually zone out. And I would go, Nina, you're zoning out. And then he'd start talking again. And then I would zone out again. I went, I am not getting this person. So he was definitely off the list. Number one was definitely a possibility. And then the third one, he was actually the president of the Management Consultants Association. He and we got along like a house on fire, and he was such a counsellor, a support for the period that he was working. And I used that business plan to then seek venture, a business angel investor. I'd read this book, bestseller in Australia called Enterprise and Venture Capital by Chris Gollis. I read that book, and he said what you do to grow is you sell percentages of your business and get funds to get capital to grow. So I went, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to follow that strategy. And yes, that business plan got me my business angel, which is great. So, and we're talking 20 years ago. So I'm just saying that process was that one in the middle. I just couldn't focus on the conversation, and I figure it was we were just not connecting. Whereas the third one, yes, we connected.
Yeah, and people talk about rapport, and they talk about mirror matching, and they talk about rubbing the belly and patting the head and doing all these funny things. But at the end of the day, usually it falls down to, is the consultant interested in you enough to want to know more about you rather than talk at you? And
yeah, that must have been it, because he was. I picked him, and that was the right choice. He was fabulous. Yeah,
yeah. And so I love the Columbo consultants. The consultant that comes in and goes, just one other question. They put the Columbo hat on, and so being curious becomes the goal. A lot of people talk about doing discovery, and they come in and they ask a bunch of questions, and they leave, and then they come back and send a proposal. And again, I don't think the method's right. I think the method really needs to be a collaborative design, which means that the people who are in charge of rolling it out into the organization need to be involved in how it's going to come together, which means that the consultant of today needs to be a facilitator. They need to be able to facilitate that conversation, especially when you've got multiple departments that aren't seeing eye to eye. You've got silos happening. How can you get that one true voice for the program or the project so that everyone understands what we're all trying to do?
And in my experience being trained or being accredited in ProSci change management, which is the ADCAR model, what often happens with organizations is they're going to roll out, maybe it's a software update across the board, or it might be something different, but they engage a project manager who's going to do all the technical changes. They also need a change manager who will look at the human element of accepting the change and being open to the change and having a change plan for communicating the change to people ongoing as the steps are rolled out. And so this is where change managers are often engaged too late because they only thought about the project management, not the change management, which equals the human aspect, the human acceptance of the change.
Yes. And that's where a lot of organizations might hire a specialist or a technical consultant before they would have hired a generalist and process consultant. I think if you're at the broader steps of an idea or a problem, go to the generalist first, because they're going to help you identify what are the specific steps and the processes that you need to take.
Now, are there any names of particular methods that different consultants use, or like I mentioned ProSci change management? Are there any kind of accreditations that you should look for that they have? I mean, is it MBA? Is it something like that?
So there are obviously MBAs. There are certified management consultants. There are all these little acronyms that you can have at the end of a name. But in my experience, they don't add up to the result that you might be looking for. It's really about experience and expertise. So I would be looking at case study material and the work that had been done previously, and potentially even recommendations, well above credentials. Because someone coming straight out of university is going to have credentials. They may have never actually been in the workplace and have that MBA. And so they've got expertise, but they don't have wisdom. They don't have the ability to apply.
There's a perfect movie, a George Clooney movie called Up in the Air, all about that. I saw it again recently.
Yeah, and the consultant comes in to show the company how to fire people.
and it's all theory.
Yeah, she'd never fired anyone before. And so, it's a very different, what's Mike Tyson's famous saying? Everyone's got a plan until you get punched in the face. So, yeah.
Right. All right. Well, okay. So I'm a manager of a team. I'm employed by a big organization, and they've given me a budget to find a consultant, and they've given me authority. Of course, there'll be collaboration. What should I be looking for to shortlist a consultant that I then introduce to the board or my senior leader?
Yeah, absolutely. So hopefully you've got peers and mentors of your own. If you have, I would definitely speak to them for recommendations, because they've been around a little while. At the very least, they're going to know who to ask for those recommendations. Taking it just to tender or putting it through a tender board is sort of rife with problems. There is a lot of, let's say, nefarious organizations, not necessarily anyone I'm working with, who will come out and just sort of bring in a cheap price to get the first engagement to get into the organization, then just work on like opening up the project, and it just can become bigger than Ben-Hur. And so you're looking for those recommendations. You're looking about who can I speak to ask? Now, if you're not sure who to ask, there are places like the Institute of Management Consultants, and I've got a good connection with them. You can talk to their president, and the president can identify some people who might be on a short list. And the thing with talking to those presidents is that their reputation actually sits very, very closely to their recommendations. And so they're not going to steer you too far off center. At the worst case scenario, you're going to get a very smart person who's going to come in and go, this is actually not the role for me. Let me recommend this to somebody else. Yeah. So recommendations certainly the way. And I would lean on your mentors and your senior leaders to identify people that they've worked with in the past. I think that's always a useful process. A question you might want to ask is, what to avoid? What to avoid when engaging a consultant.
Yes.
What are the pitfalls of avoiding consultants? So I'll be the
what should you not do?
Yeah. What should you not do? And so I sort of mentioned it before, but especially if you're new into an organization, I think that your opportunity, if you want to be someone who gets things done, is to really understand how the business engages consultants and how it uses its budget. So you'll have maybe you'll have a procurement part of the department inside the business. Maybe there are certain people who have to sign off on your recommendations. Understand that up front, so that when you actually select the person that you really want to work with because they're ideal, that you can champion them through the organization rather than having to actually go through the longest version of what red tape looks like.
Yes, I've had that sometimes with organizations, becoming a new vendor.
Yeah, becoming a new vendor. And so usually if someone's been in the organization for more than 10 years, they'll know what landmines not to step on. They'll know what is discretionary spend. They'll know when a certain budget hits a legal review. They'll understand all these different requirements. So if you do not know that yet within an organization, again, if you want to be someone who gets things done, then understanding what are the paths to enable you to get those done becomes key. And I find a lot of people who have smaller departments where their budgets can be sometimes smaller, they've got smaller resources, maybe marketing, maybe L&D, they will have to get good at understanding that stuff so that they can actually get change into the organization, right? So understanding how the business buys, I think, is a massive key. A mistake in that, though, is then just broadly going out to tender with a specific problem that you want solved in a specific way. So most people who are experiencing a problem don't have the expertise because they're in the problem to do a unbiased diagnostic. All right, so to understand what is actually happening and then what is the best solution moving forward. And so I have seen businesses put out to tender, rather than a consultant to fix a problem, a consultant to actually implement a solution.
Right.
And so, so implementing a solution means we've already solved the problem, and now we're taking steps to solve it. But that doesn't make sense for a consultant, because the consultant needs to consult. And so that's the space for a service provider, right? So if you're going to
that's the difference between a consultant and a service provider.
That's it.
Very interesting distinction. And I'll just at this point say, some years ago I won a tender for change management where they specified they wanted training delivery on Cotter's 8 steps. What they didn't say is our department, a Queensland government department, is closing down, and this is actually transition training for people to empower them so they can get another job. We didn't know that when we answered the tender.
Yeah.
And we actually had to redesign the program because it wasn't about, for the people that were actually most affected, they didn't want to learn Cotter's 8 steps.
And that's where sometimes, rather than trying to put out a tender or a request a quote on the entire engagement, it's far better to just like break it up into its smaller parts and say, can we have a review? Can we do a scoping? Can we do a small piece, even before the strategy? Can we just see what's going on? Right? And it means that you're not going to have to spend $80, $100, $200,000 plus on implementation. You just spend, $10,000, maybe $15,000 on some real solid and an effective, not even research, but assessment. Right? Assessment on what's actually happening, so we can start to address what we need.
So starting out with, you're a manager of a team, you feel that you could benefit by getting some fresh ideas from outside. And honestly, there are some ideas people, they just download idea after idea, and that's who you want, because then you can pick and choose. They also have to make sure that they get all the permissions, internal permissions, right. So in other words, you don't go getting quotes from consultants, because they take an hour or two to do, maybe longer, even just to send the quote, without broaching it with senior leadership and say, what do you think of this approach? What do you think about my getting an external consultant?
Yeah.
And really doing a business case for it.
And to that point, without throwing ego on the fire, some of these people that you're looking to engage with are the best in the world. Right? They are the person you absolutely want in the business to help you solve this problem. And so putting them through a process that's going to be onerous, or putting them through a process that's going to make them not want to work with the organization is not the best way forward. Now, a lot of people put a lot of effort into engaging good talent when it comes to employees. But they don't think about the same thing of engaging a consultant. Now, a consultant was an employee at some point, but they aspired further than that, and they worked a lot harder than that, and they actually got to a point where they are some of the best in the world. And so making sure that you're engaging this person in a way that it's going to be the most effective for you is a real key. So I think speaking to these people rather than it just being written is allowing for that time to actually have a conversation is a big smart move you can do early.
Do some of your consultants find that companies engaging a consultant only want to email briefs and will avoid a telephone conversation?
Yeah, and look, there's benefits for having written communication. There are reasons to do it. There's some leverage in it. But just because, look, the greatest example is you engage a consultant through a written communication. You haven't spoken to them. You don't know what their style of communication verbally and physically is. They come into the organization and they can't lead the process. Now, a consultant these days needs to do what a coach used to do, which is pace and lead. They need to be able to come in and pace the organization, what's going on, what's currently happening, tap into where we're at, meet them where they're at, and then lead the change.
So we're talking about they'll conduct a meeting where they brief people on what's going to happen, and then they have another meeting where they keep people up to date with and maybe assign tasks and roles, or is it not like that?
Well, I mean, you can, and people do, but I mean, a simple way of just of getting that communication is the visual. So, like, here is a line, right? And here's where we are, and here's where we want to go, and here are the milestones that we're going from here to there. And I think knowing what those milestones are, not in a gentle, soft, cloud-like way, but in a very firm, KPI-driven. We will know we're here when X happens.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes. Allows
you to see the milestones and know what point you're up to and see how far you've traveled.
Oh, yes. That's because that sense of progress. I remember a conversation we had once about people in who are working with you as your direct reports always point out how they've made personal progress, and it keeps them motivated for longer. Even if you can't give them a management role straight away, you want people to be patient enough to stay inside the organisation if they're really great at their work.
Yeah, so breaking down an engagement into smaller parts, and ideally that the consultant, a smart consultant, will be doing that with and for you. But breaking it down to its smaller pieces, sometimes you can bite off far more than you can chew in the trying to solve a problem. You try and solve it in one step, rather than actually breaking it down to its parts. And some stories that come to mind just thinking about that is we once worked with an organization and we were putting change into the communication side of the business. And because of certain upper management and how the change happened in that management, there ended up being 3 different communications directors that changed over in the one project.
Right.
Which means
communication directors, really responsible roles.
Yeah, that's right. And so the one left, another one came in, that one got turned over and came out, another one came in. And so the project's running, and you got this new lead coming into a project that's already running, and the consultant, which is us at the time, was actually like keeping it on track and onboarding them
yes
into their own role. And it was because back then we didn't probably lead it as well as we could, because we should have chopped it into smaller pieces.
Yes.
More easily attainable pieces. And
more modular approach. And then if there is a turnover in personnel, it can be accommodated.
Because the biggest thing that happens probably more often than not is international buyout, and your organisation changes completely.
Oh, and, yes. We're not doing that anymore.
CEOs leaving their position, let alone middle management, and you'll put a project that you spent 3 years because it's taken that long to get it done. We're ready to go. And then new senior office that's just bought your company says, no, we're not going to do that. And it's because it was too big.
I'm really keen for a story, a story that I can visualize of a consultant that was engaged, and really a dream story, a dream situation where the consultant came in, they operated this way, and the potential outcome. Okay. Have you got something like that?
Yeah. There's all sorts of stories. We've got some really smart people that we work with in the Consulting Guild and the Forge. These are the programs that we help consultants work on, and we hear about their outcomes that they create. And there's some amazing people who work in market access, for instance, and they come in to work with pharmaceutical companies or IT companies. And it's about how do we take this new product to market, because not only is there the challenge of getting it to market in more of a, not just marketing, but a communications point of view and positioning, but there's also the red tape, especially within pharmaceutical, of like, how do you actually get this thing through its red tape to an outcome? You've got like how are we going to go to market? So that's more of a launch side of things. But on the other is how are we going to get our product to be allowed to launch? Right.
So you've got the FDA in America and the TGA in Australia.
That's right.
Your government bodies that approve a product.
And so there's vehicles have same sort of regulations. There are other industries that have these regulations. Now, one of the smart consultants we work with has become very good at not even just helping people take these products to market, but helping them save millions in the time it takes to actually get the approval. So let's say that we've got a product being created, right? It's ready to go. There can be a 9-month to 18-month window of like before we're allowed to launch. Now, in that period of time, we've got all the employees there. We've got all the production ready to go. It's all set up. And so they can't sort of downsize that. They're just waiting on the approvals.
Oh,
and so there's millions of dollars in that. Now, this person comes in, $80,000 is the spend, and is able to shrink an 18-month window to 6 weeks.
That's unbelievable.
Yeah. And so,
but I believe it.
Yeah. And so in doing that, it's not about the make. Well, I mean, they'll make the money because they get to the market when they should, because that's the reason you've got a product that's been designed for a market. But in the savings alone, and I think that's the opportunity to get experienced consultants in, because they will save you more money than they will even make you. Because they will go, if you do it that way, it's going to cost you this much extra. If you do it this way, it's going to cost you a hell of a lot less, either in time, resources, partnership, whatever it might be. Even just simple twists on an idea of have you thought about the different way of licensing? Because if you do it this way, this will be your outcome. If you do it this way, and it might only be 2 or 3%, but in $1 billion company, that's a lot of cash. I'll give you a micro business example where small businesses can give working when we did this, and it was really heartwarming actually. A woman running a professional conference organizing business, been running it for 35 years, pretty much doing it on her own. She didn't have anyone helping her, so she just put it all on her back. She heard some of the things that we were talking about in what she could evolve the business into, and she said, all right, well, that sounds okay. And I spoke to her and I said, well, what is it that you actually want? And she said, well, I'd just like one day to be able to get my son involved in the business so that, we could work together, and maybe that just takes a little load off me. Because she was starting to get a little older. And I'm like, all right, well, that's the dream. That's what we're aiming for. And I said to her, all right, well, so if we want to do that, we're going to have to increase your market exposure. We're going to have to increase your opportunity so you've got more people coming to you. And there's going to be a little bit of additional work maybe to do because you'll have more clients coming in. But at that point, you can bring your son in. And so she was like, okay. She was a bit worried about what to do. And I crafted just a simple communication for her. I said, okay, now send it. And she didn't send it. And then a week went past, and I said, let's just send it. Absolutely, I'll send it. And a week went past, she didn't send it. And so I said, all right, let's talk about why you're not sending it.
Yeah.
And we talked about her fears and her concerns, and she broke down. She was in tears, and she was like, she was scared of the change. And this is the thing that I see in large organizations as much as small, is they don't fear success. They fear the change to reach success, like who they need to become or what they would need to do. And they fear all these, what could happen on the way through pieces. And we agreed, and I worked with her there and then I said, send it. So I couldn't do it first. She had to do it herself. She sent the communication. She took a breath, and then we heard her email go bing, 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 bing. She had 270 responses to a simple communication saying that would you be interested in doing a thing?
And because so you co-wrote or you wrote marketing material.
I coached and consulted her to write it herself, and that was the key. It wasn't. It was about her just taking the step. And for a majority of companies that we work with, whether they're big multinationals or whether they're small independents, it's about taking the step and enabling them to do it. So she took the step, and then all these conversations happened. We helped her manage it. She managed it quite easily. 6 months later, she goes, I don't know what to do next. We've started to grow. And I said, you know what it is? It's time to engage your son. And she broke down again, this time happy tears, and her son was on board within the next 6 weeks. And she's just gone from strength to strength. Once she actually engaged her son, her mindset shifted. She became a different type of manager, and now she's employed like 3-4 new people and is growing the business from an owner's seat rather than the person who's doing the work.
Wow.
And it's just an analogy that analogy of her specific story is I see it happen throughout all sorts of organizations at all sorts of levels. There is often a challenge by the leadership or even the middle management to not want to change too much because it'll personally affect them. They would like the success, but at what cost? And so they imagine all these costs. And so to have someone there who's been through it multiple times, who will know where the pitfalls are and actually can be there to support them when they need the support, and can be the vision for them when they need to be able to see what the next step's going to look like, that on its own is a massive benefit of having a consultant on board.
Look, I really appreciate, Russell, you doing this deep dive with me, because to me it was pretty grey and abstract what consultants actually do, and you've really put a spotlight on it and made it clear. So how can people work either with you personally or with anyone that you've trained?
Yeah. Well, you can always reach out to me. RussellPearson.com is a website.
It'll be in the show notes, of course. Yep.
Yeah, double S, double L, the way Russell should be spelled. And I'm more than happy to introduce you to some of the absolutely super smart individuals. There's so many specialists. There's so many experts in both expertise, but also in process. And, from time to time, we do work with clients still, but I get the most benefit out of being the sort of the stone that drops into the river and all the pond and all the ripples come out. So I if I can enable the consultants to enable you, I've done my job.
Yeah. Well, you're certainly a smart cookie, and I've actually worked with you over several years in my collaboration with Professional Speakers Australia, because you were a past national president, which is top honcho. And I've always been totally impressed by your ideas. And every now and again, you'll do a workshop and I go, oh, yeah, I'll do that one. I always walk away with a ton of ideas. So you're fabulous in that respect. So I reckon anybody listening can they subscribe to a newsletter or anything?
Well, I mean, the easiest way to see what I'm doing is I've got a podcast, and Your Consulting Business podcast is where you can hear the sort of things that we listen to. We have all sorts of different resources we make available from time to time. Sometimes they are for managers within businesses, and other times they're for people who are emerging consultants.
Lovely.
But happy to support you and point you in the right direction.
Well, that's the other thing, is there might be someone listening who actually thinks I'm an ideas person, I'm not being appreciated, and I might go out on my own.
And then there's the old adage of you thought you were working for an idiot, and then you realize when you worked on your own that you definitely were. So, yeah, I mean, people who are thinking of starting their own consultancy, definitely come and talk to me. There are some things that we can actually help you do to make sure that you don't have those early business wobbles.
So the podcast is what is it?
Your Consulting Business.
Your Consulting Business.
Yeah.
Lovely. And it's on all the audio.
All the audios. We've got it on YouTube as well, because it's a video podcast too. And, go over there, subscribe, and, reach out from time to time.
Thank you for your time today, Russell Pearson. It's been a joy and a delight. Always lovely talking with you.
Thanks so much, Nina.
My guest this episode was Russell Pearson, who is the consultant's consultant and host of the Your Consulting Business podcast. My name is Nina Sunday. This is the Manage Self, Lead Others podcast. And tell a friend about our podcast, because the listenership is growing. We seem to have listeners from all around the world, and you can watch us on YouTube as well. C-Suite TV, Spotify has the videos as well. So take care. Until next time, bye for now and enjoy good things.
Nina Sunday is on a mission to help leaders transform culture. To book Nina Sunday CSP to speak at your conference, visit ninasunday.com to request a proposal. Nina travels from Brisbane, Australia for in-person presentations Australia-wide. Twice certified virtual presenter, Nina Sunday presents virtually, globally, for any time zone.